Joining us here tonight on the Sports Queue, I'm really excited to welcome back Jim Paschke. He has, of course, been the voice of the Bucks on TV for 35 seasons, and he's retiring after this season. And I also spent some time as the TV voice of the Brewers, also called Badgers games as well. You recognize him from those different teams here in Wisconsin. But, of course, we'll talk Bucks with him tonight as the Bucks continue their series against the Atlanta Hawks in the Eastern Conference Finals. Jim, thanks so much for the time tonight. How are you?
I'm great, Hunter. Good to be with you.
Yeah, good to be. Great to have you on the show again, and thanks for coming back. And we'll get into the Giannis injury, the specifics of the Hawks-Bucks series, in just a couple of minutes. But first, just kind of a more general question for you, because as much as there's kind of a sad feeling around the Bucks today due to the injury to Giannis last night and the loss, this has been quite the playoff run, especially upsetting the Nets last round. What have been your overall thoughts on this playoff run by the Bucks so far?
Well, until last night, it had been so far so good, but it had been a little bumpy. This has not been a smooth ride. The Bucks have had a few games where they've maybe had a few more questions or provided a few more questions than answers, but ultimately they had been winning. They were taking series, and it looked like they were in pretty good shape heading into last night's game with Atlanta. But overall, I think they've shown progress. I think they've shown growth. I think individual players have shown some growth, Chris Middleton in particular. We can talk about that more specifically. But and Giannis, of course, has done his thing. And today we're just waiting for official word on the extent of any injury that Giannis may have incurred last night.
And that's where I do want to go next with you is kind of, what was your reaction watching Giannis go down last night? Obviously, as fans, we're, devastated to see our star go down, but especially for you because you have a professional yet personal relationship with Giannis, so seeing someone go down like that can't be easy.
Well, the personal part of it takes place when we interview, and, during a game, it's happened before. He's gone down, and you kind of catch your breath a little bit. Last night seemed different to me. And so, it was more a case of me, having my breath taken away based on what it means to this series potentially and the playoffs potentially. But we have to wait and see. I gathered myself as everyone did, and we're hopeful today, and we'll see what the final word is. But Giannis is pretty resilient. I'm hoping that it's another case of resiliency here. We just have to wait and see, Hunter.
Yeah, and that's kind of the sense, I think, around Bucks fandom as well today. We'll get back to Giannis here in a minute, but before he went out, the Bucks came into that game obviously knowing Trae Young was going to be out about an hour before tip-off, and he didn't. In the first part of that game, the Bucks still didn't play too well. So knowing how big of a win that could have been to go up 3-1, especially with Atlanta's star out, were you kind of surprised at how the Bucks came out and started that game last night?
Well, we've seen it a few times in the postseason, and each time I kind of notice it, and I wonder, what's going on that would make it difficult to have energy at the start of a game, particularly against a team like Atlanta that is going to bring the energy. All teams have. In the first series against Miami, the Bucks did have energy, and then, of course, in Game 2 against Brooklyn, they seemed to struggle a little bit with that at the start of the game, and they never found it that night. Game 5, they lost their energy, it appeared, when they were up by 17 points. And then, of course, a miraculous and wonderful and extremely well-played Game 7 against Brooklyn was that erased everything at that point. And then Game 1 against Atlanta, a little bit of a slow start. Game 2, they came out and dominated. Game 3, slow start, but they overcame it. They wore Atlanta down. And then last night, a slow start, but they were unable to come back from that. And that was, exacerbated by the fact that Giannis went down in the game. And I think that everybody was kind of shaken by that. So maybe that's part of what happened last night. But, overall, they've been advancing, and they've been doing it in somewhat bumpy fashion, as I mentioned. So it's been rather intriguing. And, there are always steps and improvements a team can make, individuals can make. And the Bucks still have to figure out, in my opinion at least, have to figure out their energy, and how they're going to apply that and when they need to apply that. And most often you would like to see that applied early. particularly a game against a team like Atlanta that you can put on their heels perhaps and then maybe sustain that. So that's what I've been seeing. And, other than that, I think there have been some excellent performances, but there have been some nights where you wonder, what's going on and why they can't sustain that energy that's required at this level. But by and large, they have done it. So it's a handful of games we're talking about, and they've obviously won more than they've lost.
Yeah, and the sentiment you shared there, I think a lot of Bucks fans can relate to, because I think it's a lot that we question as well. Just why don't they have that energy? Why don't they have that spark? Being as someone, Jim, who covers the team and who's been around these guys, is there anything specific that you can remember that stands out as to why they don't maybe have as much energy as some of the other teams, especially even in these playoff games where the stakes are so high?
Well, I don't think there's a specific reason why, and this isn't just the Bucks. I think there are teams that struggle with this at times during the regular season because it's a long season, it's an arduous season. But in the playoffs, I think teams struggle with energy because the other team has more or shuts it down or is doing things that keep you out of your natural rhythm. But this Bucks team was built to, let me say it this way, if this Bucks team can't play the way they want, they have been prepared to play the way they have to. And, by and large, they've been able to do that, Hunter. But there are nights when, there's always another great NBA team on the court in the playoffs against you. And sometimes we look at what a team does, in this case the Bucks, and we don't always look at what the other team is doing to hold their energy down or to take them off their rhythm or off their game. So that's what I see. I mean, I'd have to look at it more seriously for a longer period of time to see if there's anything more than that. But in the playoffs, it can happen very easily because the other team has to win a game, and they come out with a lot of energy and a lot of, just excellent attitude and all of that. So you're constantly up against that sort of thing. And in the playoffs, every game gets tougher. The games don't get easier in the playoffs. They get tougher no matter what the situation is. You can be up 3-1, and that game 5 is brutal because the other team always has its back against the wall, and they're a wounded animal trying to get out of the corner. And so, the playoffs are a different situation altogether. So you have to be a little careful how you evaluate energy when you're talking about the postseason.
That's a very good point. Jim Paschke joining us here on the Sports Queue tonight, longtime voice of the Milwaukee Bucks. And one of the things, we talked in May, Jim, before the playoff run, and you mentioned a key to their success was going to be mental toughness and knowing they could beat any team that was put in front of them. And that kind of a little bit goes along with what we were just talking about with the energy as well. I think we've seen some really good. Obviously, that game 7, I think the toughness that they showed in that, they were down a lot in that game and ended up coming out on top. We've seen it, we saw it game 3 against the Hawks. They were able to come back. What have you seen kind of as far as that mental toughness goes? Because that was one of your keys that you brought up heading into this playoff run.
Well, it was certainly, and that's essentially what we're talking about when we talk about energy. Do you have the mental toughness to find energy? Do you know when to apply energy? Do you know whether or not you need it, right at the start of a game? The other night they brought energy late in the game, wore down Atlanta, and won after a tough start. So it's all of those things. And the Bucks are making great strides. 2 years ago, they didn't have the kind of mental toughness that I'm seeing now. So that's all good news. They are progressing. Their playoff experience over the last 3 seasons has improved that. They're starting to understand what it takes. And you have to go through these difficult times, these bumps, if you will, to understand just how difficult it is to win an NBA championship. I mean, it's one of the toughest things you could ever imagine doing in sport just because of the nature of this league, the quality of the athletes in this league. The teams that get this far are superb teams. I mean, it's a really difficult grind. But the Bucks are making progress. So, save for a handful of games where maybe it slipped a little bit, I think they are gaining on the mental toughness aspect of winning a title.
I agree. So looking ahead, Giannis, is a key cog to this team, obviously, but they have talent around him. They have Chris Middleton, who you mentioned before, of course, Drew Holiday, who they acquired, PJ Tucker, who played well, especially defensively this postseason. What do the Bucks need to do to regroup and win this specific series and eliminate the Hawks? Win 2 of the next 3 if they indeed are without Giannis for the rest of this series.
Well, I think if they're without Giannis, then you have to start thinking things through and start realizing what you have to do without him. It's going to be a blow. It's going to be an emotional blow. And they're going to have to, really gather themselves, talk about it, figure out what they can do in his absence. They can win games without Giannis. They've done that. But they have to win 2 out of 3. And, again, Atlanta's not going to make that easy. They're not going to allow that to be a walkover. And so you just have to, think it through and really figure out what you can do. Now, it's going to be tough if Giannis doesn't play. It's going to be incredibly difficult because he's the cornerstone, the heart of the team. You tear the heart out, and then you have to figure out something. You have to figure out how long you can play without a heart, I guess. Or find another one, and that's what they're going to have to do. We're just going to have to wait and see. I wish I had better answers for you, but at this point, everyone is still reeling from the injury, and we need to find out, how difficult it may be moving forward. Does he miss 1? Does he miss 2? The answers aren't available to us right now, Hunter.
Exactly. You're exactly right about that. Jim Paschke joining us here on the Sports Queue here tonight and taking a look, just maybe if indeed they do get past the Hawks, do you think there is a team that the Bucks match up better against between the Suns and Clippers on the other side, or is it more the Bucks should just focus on themselves and getting past the Hawks and playing as well as they can with or without Giannis?
Well, in light of the injury to Giannis, until we find out the answer, it's really hard for me at this point to look forward. But I'll play along with you a little bit because, with Giannis, we were starting to look maybe ahead. We shouldn't ever, but we, are human, and that's the tendency. My take on that has been that when the Bucks got past Brooklyn, they were the best team standing. They were the best team that was still in. And to me, that was good enough if you have the toughness and have the energy, okay? I think they're the best team standing, but they have to have a lot of it moving in the right direction. All the pieces and parts have to be moving together forward, and all of it has to come together because Phoenix is a tough team. The Clippers, if they prevail, would provide, certain things that the Bucks would struggle with, I'm sure. So my take has been, act like you're the team to beat and act like that every minute of every game and take your best shot at a trophy and see what happens. And again, I would not be changing that stance. However, I have to be cautionary until we find out the status of Giannis.
Yes, exactly. Jim Paschke joining us for just a minute longer here on the Sports Queue here tonight. So last question for you, and kind of a more of a personal question for you. Obviously the coverage on Bally Sports Wisconsin ended after the first round, so you finished up your Bucks play-by-play career when the Heat series ended. But what was that last broadcast like, Jim? Because I'm guessing after 35 years of doing it, it had to be a different feeling for you knowing that was your last one as you go into retirement.
Well, it was a little different. I had my mental situation straightened out by then. I mean, I was comfortable with my decision. I knew that I didn't know if that would be the last game, Hunter, but I knew that would be the last series. And, the Bucks took me out on a sweep, and I was happy with that. We had 4 great games to call, and everything was good. I didn't really have any second thoughts, or I didn't have any tugs of the heart or anything like that. I've made my decision. I'm comfortable with it. And, I hope that remains the same as we move beyond this season. But it's all good for me right now. I feel good about it. And I hope I've left Bucks basketball, at least the broadcast part of it, in as good or better shape than when I found it and took it over and was given the opportunity. So I hope I've done that. And, again, I'll never be able to repay the debt to the fans of Wisconsin and how they have treated me and allowed me to learn on the job and get better, I hope, over the 35 seasons. So one more time, thanks to everyone for that. And again, it's a debt I will never be able to repay.
Well, I know for sure that we will miss you, and glad to hear that you're happy and looking forward to a great retirement for you. We'll miss you on our TV, but very happy for you in your retirement. Jim, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join me again here on the Sports Queue, and hoping the Bucks can overcome whatever obstacle this may be with Giannis or whatever happens here in the next couple of games. Hopefully they can get to an NBA Finals, and maybe we'll even be talking here in the next few weeks again if indeed that happens. But thanks so much again for the time. Great to talk to you again.
Thank you, Hunter. I hope that does happen. And, we just put our heads down and keep our spirits up and see how it goes. And then we move on to the next season and hope again for the best. And thank you for having me on. I'll be watching your career. I'm very interested in your progression. You're doing well, and I appreciate that. And I know that you will have a successful career as well. So thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, well, thank you for the kind words, Jim. That means a lot, and we'll talk again soon.